Hello and welcome to the first of a series of EU Reporter discussion programmes brought to you in partnership with Human Rights Without Frontiers. Today we're looking at child marriage, defined as a marriage in which one or both of the people getting married is below the legal age of consent in that country. Of course, in nearly every case, it's the girl who's underage. With me to talk about the issues are Elisa van Ruijten, a gender specialist at Human Rights Without Frontiers International. We've got Mahinda Watson, who is a researcher and an activist against child marriage, who escaped a forced marriage of her own as a teenager, and Emilio Puccio, coordinator of the European Parliament Intergroup on Children's Rights, which is a cross-party, cross-national group consisting of 90 MEPs, rather more than 90 MEPs, and 25 child-focused organisations. Every day, somewhere in the world, 39,000 young girls are married before they reach the age of majority. More than a third of them are younger than 15, according to the Council of Europe. We may be well into the 21st century, but for too many girls, they're still forced to live in a bygone age of male dominance. Human Rights Without Frontiers has just produced a report on women's rights and the Abrahamic faiths of Christianity, Islam and Judaism. And the compiler was Elisa. So, Elisa, can you tell me about this report, what you've discovered? Was there anything in there you didn't already know?
Sure, thanks. So this report looks at the tensions that exist between women's rights and religion, in this case, the Abrahamic religions, and it covers a variety of topics, and child marriage is one of them. What we discovered is that the main drivers of child marriage are usually poverty or economical reasons, but religion does play a role in that. Religion can sort of perpetuate or sustain this phenomenon, and that people, even if they don't believe that it's part of their religion, will use it as a justification for going forwid with a marriage.
I mean, most people associate it with perhaps Islam, which is a bit unfair, because in fact, Muhammad himself is supposed to have married a girl of 6, but it's very debatable, and it's not part of the Quran. It's certainly not an established part of the faith.
Right, and that's something that we looked at in terms of looking at the actual texts of the religions in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and the issue of child marriage is talked about in all of the texts, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. However, we couldn't find any evidence that it was actually something that should be practiced per se just because it was written about. So, yeah.
So, Mahinda, you've been a researcher on the whole issue of child marriage. You've written papers on it. You have a doctorate in it, in subjects related to it. How important is it, you feel, to just keep on fighting to get the message across? Because, in fact, the numbers of child brides is not going down, is it?
No, unfortunately not. We've been working on the problem for well over 30 years, and World Bank data suggests that we've only just reduced it by about 11%, so we've got a huge way to go. Part of the problem is that whilst child marriage is decreasing, with our efforts to educate girls and empower them, we found that it's being offset by population increase. So we're going to face the biggest youth bulge we've seen in the whole of the history of the planet. So we're expecting very many more young women to be around, and if we don't address child marriage, we're going to have a huge population explosion. We also find that it's increasing in humanitarian settings, where parents are using child marriage as a way of protecting their children from sexual violence, and it also reduces the burden on families. It's one less mouth to feed for them. So really we're seeing a decrease, but on the other hand, we're also seeing an increase, and in the end, we're not seeing a great shift overall.
I mean, there are attempts being made in certain areas. The African Union, for instance, is making very brave efforts to stop it. Uganda is trying. It's being done in various places. In Europe itself, we're suddenly faced with a very large influx of migrants, some of whom are married, but were married before they were the legal age in their countries of choice. That must create bigger problems for Europe.
Yes, I think Europe is seeing unprecedented customs and traditions which it hasn't previously seen perhaps in such numbers. Definitely there are all sorts of issues it's throwing up that just simply setting very strict standards is going to be very difficult. because I think we'll need to approach it on a case-by-case basis. You may have an example of a young girl who was married as a child bride, arrives here with a husband who is much older, but maybe her whole family has been killed in the war, so she has nobody. So what do you do? What do the countries here do? Do you separate the couple? Do you put her into a foster care? Do you try to find a solution? It's throwing up all sorts of things that I think we hadn't thought about before. So.
I mean, for Europe, it is a problem. Emilio, I must bring you in here. It's a problem for Europe because you've got these unprecedented numbers of people with different cultures and traditions coming in. And if a girl, for instance, was married underage, is still underage, when she enters as a refugee, her rights are actually reduced, aren't they, in Europe?
Yeah, thanks for asking this question and to raising the point that, in fact, nowadays the child marriage is affecting very much as well. Communities even in Europe is no longer happening only in developing countries. We've been witnessing several instances of cases, like you just said. It is true that thanks to the work of the Intergroup on Children's Rights, we managed to include child marriage, and so as a form of violence against girls. And so one of the grounds according to which a girl can actually apply for asylum here in the European Union. Although it's also we've been advocating for having as well the support of child protection officers in all the asylum procedure. So yeah, this has created a big public outcry in some member states as well. But absolutely, the EU has to take a clear stand on these issues as well.
Do you feel that it hasn't really done enough? Because I mean, there was the rule that supposedly any sort of project that involved EU aid to outside of Europe was supposed to be 75% safe in terms of recognition of women's rights and women's safety and so on. And yet it's only about 28%. I mean, the EU hasn't even lived up to its own promises, has it? And it's very difficult to do so.
Yes, it is difficult, of course, to do so. But like I said, with the Intergroup on Children's Rights, we've been active ever since its establishment in 2013, at the beginning of this mandate, to actually work out a child rights-based approach. And a holistic approach when it comes to child marriage, because it is true that in purely legal terms, when it comes to child marriage, this is not considered to be a EU topic per se. We don't have EU competence in this case. There's not a legal competence per se, because family law is a matter that, of course, relates to member states' competence. However, it is true that the family law, and so child marriages, like in this case, since it's a human rights violation, it absolutely falls into this category of the security and justice and home affairs that the treaties, of course, enables then the EU on taking a clear stand and introducing some pieces of legislation that can create a set of values and principles that need to be abided by every single member state.
Do you find that in the countries that are sourcing the refugees, if you like, the ones who are coming in here, Elisa, is it a case that because some of them are in conflict zones, that actually drives it and makes it worse?
Do you mean it makes it worse them coming here?
I mean, no, it makes it worse. It makes it more likely that a young girl will get married, will be forced to get married simply because she's living through a conflict zone.
Absolutely. So actually, in June, we organized an event here in the Parliament called the EU's Role in Protecting Refugee Children, which was organized by HRWF and SB Overseas and co-hosted by the Children's Rights Intergroup and the Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup here in the Parliament. And we specifically looked at the issue of child marriage in refugee camps, and our partner SB Overseas works in terms of providing educational centers for young girls and women there. And so they've seen a huge increase. I think it was something like it went from 13% to maybe something like 46% in just a year or two in terms of the rate of child marriage within their camps and their communities. And a lot of times they see girls come in and then they don't see them again a few days later.
Mahinda, can I come back to you? You've actually had experience because you've managed to avoid being married off when you were very young yourself. I mean, how difficult was that? And is it very difficult for people from one culture? I mean, you were from a Sikh family, a very devout Sikh family, living within Britain. Is it more difficult for families from different cultures? Do they come under different pressures?
Yeah, I think the problem is, as with all, my father came over as a labour migrant, for example, and when they came over, the families bring their traditions with them. So for them, for generations, we've had arranged marriages in the family, and I'm one of a family of 6, and the other 5 all went along with the idea of an arranged marriage, and for some reason I decided it wasn't for me. But they had found somebody for me to marry from the age of maybe about 15, 16. And I kept saying, I don't want to marry this guy, and nobody listened. And they said, well, you're too young. This guy has a house, he has a job, he's educated. So they were thinking in terms of financial security for me. But I myself felt it wasn't right. And one day I noticed that they were buying in large quantities of alcohol and food. And I asked, what's the special occasion? And they said, oh, it's for your engagement party. So that hit me. It was a huge shock. And I protested again that I don't want this marriage, and I could feel that I would get into big trouble if I didn't say something, even though that was not what my family expected. But I was basically given an ultimatum: just marry this guy or get out the family and don't come back. And that was very hard. You often find communities use ostracizing the person as a way, as a scapegoat to, certainly my family would use that as a lesson to my younger sister or to other people in the community, that if you follow suit, this is what will happen to you. So it was a very difficult decision to make, but I made it without having any human rights background. I wasn't a feminist. I would love to say I was, but I wasn't. It just felt that it wasn't right. And basically I would say the same to young girls. Being forced in that situation, you have to follow your own path, and if you feel this is not right, it's not what you want, you have to stand up. And it's a big sacrifice, yes, but I think things worth fighting for never come easy. So you have to prepare to do that, and I'm hoping that I can make a contribution to other people and hopefully avoid that in other cases.
Do you feel that your experience has actually, in a sense, almost helped you in the path that you've chosen in terms of lecturing, researching, campaigning on the issue of child marriage?
Well, yes and no. I've always been interested in biology. My background was very much health sciences, interested in women's human rights. Yes, when I came here, I found my voice after having stayed quiet for about 30 years. I didn't want to revisit the past. I closed the door on it, as many people do. It's too painful sometimes to look back. But I think setting up the NGO has really given me a platform to share my experience, and I hope it would encourage other people. No matter how long they've kept quiet, you can take these secrets to your grave if you like. But I think it's good to share, and I think other people learn, and you learn to accept it, and you grow. And I've sort of gone from being very angry at my family to realizing that they didn't do it out of malice. As you grow older and I have my own children, you see that they did what they thought was the best for me. And so I can't even be angry at them. And we're trying to, after almost 40 years, build some bridges. And I think that's important.
Is there a problem there that we in the West are inclined to be judgmental because we sort of think, well, child marriage, honor killings, all these sorts of things just are anathema to us. But it's because we don't see through their eyes.
Absolutely.
Should we?
Absolutely. I mean, this is one thing I try to do. I say, there's a lot of people, we need all the people we can get to address a huge problem like this. So there's not a question of who's involved, but it does help if you understand the issue from the inside. And I feel less angry because I can see where they're coming from. And I try not to be so judgmental. I mean, I suffered because of it, but I can see where they're coming from. And all we can do is move forward and make sure that the next generation realize we equip them with skills. We make sure they're not dependent on their husbands. They're brought up with education and they're empowered. They don't need to depend on a man, and that's a big issue. This is a really big point to get good jobs.
It's still a male-dominated world,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Sadly, I mean, Emilia, presumably there are limited powers that the EU, for instance, it would love to be able to end child marriage. So would the Council of Europe, so would the United Nations, so would all of these organisations. What are the EU's powers, though? I mean, they're fairly limited, aren't they? You're a lawyer. You know these things.
Actually, well, thank you so much for this. Actually, I would say, in fact, in this conversation, what I liked very much, and I actually appreciate as well the bravery and the work done by the NGO communities and people in the community itself, in fact, because I feel on the one hand, it is true that there's a legislative problem. So at the legislative level, a legal level, it is important for member states that what we always been advocating for in every report, in every single resolution that we've done through the Intergroup on Children's Rights, the member states put in place legislation that prohibit the possibility to getting married for underage people. And let's be honest, this is strongly affecting, of course, people of certain communities, like we said as well. And so I think what is very important as well, what we've always been advocating for like I said, in every single report we've been doing, is in fact to put in place this holistic approach. So we need also to invest in education. We need also to get involved and get engaged with community leaders, with religious leaders, with families themselves. Because here, one of the problems, we just heard that, is in fact that, many of those girls, they feel an enormous amount of pressure, and to get into force, they feel forced to get into a marriage, of course, and so because they would face exclusion for their own community, but at the same time it is important for them to be part of such a community. So once again, at the EU level, it is true that this is not strictly a EU competence by definition. But it is also important, of course, to mention here that at European level, we also do have the power to introduce some mechanisms, some calls of action, because at the end of the day, this house is the house of the people, of the European people. And of course, like instances or instruments such as the recent resolution of the European Parliament to tackle and to eradicate child marriage in the European Union are very important and powerful tools that sends a very strong political message to member states. And so, like I said, it is very important to have this human rights-based approach, holistic approach, and to involve the communities and the religious leaders, and to, of course, as well, the NGO communities that have this insight that absolutely can play a major role in tackling this problem.
But in fact, there's only 3 EU countries, the Netherlands, Germany and Sweden, where you are forbidden to marry under the age of 18.
Correct.
In the others, particularly Austria, Belgium, Italy, the UK, people can marry at 16. We're never going to harmonise that, are we? It might be an aim and an ambition, but it's going to be, Elisa, it's going to be hard to do, isn't it?
Right, yeah, I think it really depends. Because you can't say across the board that there's only one right answer for everyone. And so we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis to really see what's happening. But definitely, it's been recommended by everyone who's researching and studying it that in the best interest of girls and women, they need to have education, they need to have other economic opportunities, and so it would be wonderful if everyone would get on board with it.
Roll on the day. We are running out of time. Very briefly, if you would. We're running out of time.
It is true that, like I said, it's not EU competence as such, but we do have other international legal instruments that, of course, can kick in this case, like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Istanbul Convention, the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention. So again, we do have legislative measures, legislative tools that, of course, can serve this purpose and then can help harmonize this. Of course, like you said, it's difficult, but we do have, and those are legally binding from member states that have been ratified. All EU member states have ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, for instance.
Well, I'm afraid we have run out of time. So thanks again to our panelists, Elisa van Ruijten, Mahinda Watson and Emilio Puccio. If you'd like to support the work of Human Rights Without Frontiers, you can make a donation via PayPal or by bank transfer, the details of which you can see on the screen. Join us next month when we'll be discussing the exploitation of North Korean workers in Poland. For now, though, goodbye.